Hi, I'm Leda Meredith, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Schinus molle, also called the Peruvian pink peppercorn tree, and sometimes the California pepper tree. It grows on several continents. It's originally from the Peruvian Andes in South America, but it has spread to the southern part of North America. It won't do cold winters, so mild winter areas around the Middle East, Africa, Australia. It's considered invasive in some places now. But in any case, this is a fascinating tree, and we will be talking about it and why it is called pepper, even though it is completely unrelated to black pepper. But first, let's get into the ID. Let's start with the obvious. It is a tree. Why is that important? Because pepper, common black pepper, is a vine, not a tree. Then I'll start walking towards this one. You'll notice that the branches are delicate and kind of droopy. It almost looks like a willow tree. But as we get closer, you'll see that the compound leaves, the leaflets on them are much tinier than willow leaves. Right? And if you track up to each compound leaf, you'll notice that they're alternate on the branches. So each one of these leaflets has each one of these leaves has numerous small leaflets on it, and then joins the branch alternately. And the leaflets, this is going to be really important to remember in a little bit when we talk about a cousin of this tree, are very narrow and pointy and linear. There is another tree in the same genus that causes a severe allergic reaction in a lot of people, but its leaflets are quite different from this. So we'll talk more about that later. And then over here is a flower, and they're relatively inconspicuous, tiny, little sort of creamy white to white-green flowers. And then there's this very craggy bark in the mature trees. Mature trees can get as tall as 15 meters. There are both male and female Schinus molle trees. You need both to get the peppercorns. And this is the fruiting season for them. Remember that botanically, a fruit is any seed-bearing part of a plant, and the peppercorns, as we call them, on this tree are the seed-bearing part of the plant, but only the females will have those. So this tree is not showing any fruit, so I'm guessing it's a male. Here are some branch tips from a female Schinus molle tree. And I'll put my hand in the picture just for comparison so you can see the size of the pink peppercorns. And if you crush these, there's a sort of papery outer layer that comes off very easily, cracks and comes off very easily. And then inside of it is a big seed. It turns out that the outer part has a different flavor from the seed, and that indigenous people in South America treat them very differently. Now, we tend to just grind up the whole thing, pink part seed and all, and use it for its peppery flavor. But the outer pink part does have a noticeably milder, sweeter taste, and the seed has more of the peppery bite and a little bit of bitterness. So you can just use the whole thing together. I dry them and just put them in a pepper grinder, but you could also play around with the indigenous way of using them as two different spices. There's also a drink that they make in South America from just the sweet part, the pink part on the outside, and they ferment it into a sort of chicha, which is like almost like a beer in terms of level of alcohol. I haven't tried that yet, but maybe I will. The so-called peppercorns of Peruvian pink peppercorn or Schinus molle are considered very safe, and in fact you'll find them in commercial blends, those like 3-color pepper grinder blends you can buy at the supermarket. However, the rest of the tree, the leaves, the bark, is considered toxic. That's interesting because those parts are used in indigenous cultures as medicine, as an antidepressant, antibacterial, antiviral, and also in some shamanic healing ceremonies. So toxicity is often a matter of dosage, and I don't know enough to give you any formulas for that, but just to know that those parts that we tend not to use are in fact used in traditional cultures. Here is one of those commercially sold 3-color peppercorn blends I mentioned. And the reddish pink ones that you're looking at are in fact Peruvian pink peppercorn, Schinus molle. The black ones are our familiar Piper nigrum from the vine. And the white ones, interestingly enough, are also Piper nigrum. They're just picked underripe, and they're pale like that. So you have an unripe and a ripe Piper nigrum fruit, and then the Schinus molle Peruvian pink peppercorn fruit in this mix. But that also gives you an idea of how safe these Peruvian pink peppercorns are considered. Pepper, just the word, is a great example of why the common names of plants can be confusing. And while if you are researching and learning to identify a plant that's new to you, you really do want to learn that scientific name, because everything I'm showing you right now is commonly called pepper. So, but not only are they unrelated, they're from different genera, they're from different parts of the world. This is Capsicum annua, the chili pepper. It's from Central and South America. This is the quote-unquote true pepper, black pepper, from the Piper nigrum vine, which is native to the Malabar coast of India. This is Schinus molle, the Peruvian pink peppercorn that we've been talking about. And this is allspice. Allspice, also called English pepper, pipel anglit, and sometimes Jamaican pepper. Okay, why do these all have the name pepper? And if we were talking about them and you said, oh yeah, I'm researching pepper, we would have no idea if we were talking about the same plant unless you used a scientific name. So just have to put in a little plug for that. So let's start with pepper, black pepper, Piper nigrum. At one time, it was worth more by weight than gold. And around the time of Christopher Columbus's voyage to the Americas, well, he didn't actually know he was going to end up in the Americas, but he was heading out across the Atlantic. And part of his mandate from Queen Isabella was to find spices, and in particular, the incredibly valuable black pepper. Now, the spice routes had been cut off between Europe and Asia by the Ottoman Empire, and so they were looking for an alternate route to these incredibly valuable spices. Now, he got to the Americas, and he did not find any Piper nigrum. There was no black pepper there. But there were these other plants that had, especially these two, a little bit of a burning mouthfeel, or a lot, in the case of the chili pepper, of a burning mouthfeel like black pepper. And so he basically came back to Europe and said, I've discovered new kinds of pepper, and they all got named pepper. He also apparently showed some black peppercorns to some indigenous people in the Americas and said, where can I find this? And they sent him in the direction of this unrelated plant, allspice, which is why it's sometimes called English pepper, Jamaican pepper, pepper. Anyway, so we can all blame Columbus for this confusion. So, Capsicum annua, Piper nigrum, Schinus molle, and Pimento dioica. This one is a fairly low-growing plant. This one is a tree that, as I said, can get up to 15 meters. And this one is a completely unrelated vine from a different continent. But that's how they all got the name pepper. So there is another tree in the Schinus genus, Schinus terebinthifolius, also called Brazilian pink peppercorn tree. And a lot of people have allergic reactions to it. So I'm lucky I can eat it, and I use it as a spice just like I do the Peruvian pink peppercorn. But I don't serve it to guests, I don't serve it to family, just in case. This is in the Anacardidaceae. All these two trees that we are talking about are, which includes cashews and mango and sumac, but also poison ivy. And there are people who are very sensitive to compounds that are present in plants from that particular plant family. So, like I said, the Peruvian pink peppercorn Schinus molle is considered so safe and mild that it's sold in commercial pepper grinder, food color pepper blends. But the other one I would not mess with. Now, I do not have a Brazilian pink peppercorn tree near me to show you, so I'm going to show you a photograph. And after that, I guess, I will show you again the Schinus molle. What I want you to pay attention to is not the peppercorns, which look quite similar, but the leaflet shape. Look at the leaflet shape in the photo. It has like a fat belly. It has like a little round teardrop shape, as opposed to the linear shape of the Schinus molle, and they're quite distinct. And here again is the Peruvian pink peppercorn, or the good pink peppercorn as I think of it. And look at these leaflets. Tinier, linear, without that belly on them. And also, if I could show them to you side by side, but maybe you'll go back to that picture I showed a moment ago, the peppercorns on the Peruvian pink peppercorn tree are kind of more scattered in a delicate way, whereas on the Brazilian peppercorn tree, the Schinus terebintholium, they tend to be in denser clusters. But that's kind of a subtle distinction. Mostly I want you to notice these nice linear, not fat-bellied, not teardrop-shaped leaflets. Okay, so what can you do with your Schinus molle Peruvian pink peppercorns? Anything you can do with black peppercorns. They're beautifully aromatic and yes, peppery, and I look forward to trying the idea of using the outer covering as a separate spice from the seed. I have some experience with that because there's a North American plant called spice bush Lindera benzoin that the indigenous people do the same thing with. The covering is treated as a sweeter spice than the seed. So I'm going to play with that a little bit. But in the meanwhile, dry them, stick them in your pepper grinder, and enjoy. I'm going to sign off with a photo of a creamy ranch dip that I made with pink peppercorn, and it is absolutely delicious.